This video is step 1 of the pillowcase directions. First of all, you're going to take a look at your directions. You should have your supplies here today. You should have 3/4 of a yard of main fabric. That is this part of your pillowcase. It's the big part. You should have 1/8 of a yard of accent fabric. Sometimes this word is used in the directions as trim. So trim or accent, those are interchangeable words, but that's the little strip that's on your pillowcase. Then you should have 1/3 of a yard of hem fabric, which is the cuff of the pillowcase, and then also some thread. So we're going to be starting right here on step 1. You're going to be using the rotary cutter system for this project. So we'll go over the rotary cutting stuff in just a moment. These are the measurements that we want to cut this part of our fabric to. We are looking at the bolded and underlined parts. Now, just as a quick review of our fabric, so as I'm looking at this here, I've got my main fabric, I've got my hem, and I've got my accent. So this is the order that my fabric will go in. We're going to start with our main fabric. Okay, the directions say that the fabric should be 25 inches by 40.5. So if we're looking at our fabric and we're laying it out here, there's several parts that we need to take a look at. First of all, this tightly woven edge right here, and sometimes on some of your fabrics, the print won't go all the way to the edge. There'll be a white strip right there, but sometimes the print goes all the way to the edge. This edge on your fabric is called the selvage edge. That is a really tightly woven edge that won't fray. These two edges, this is as if the person at the fabric store took your bolt of fabric that you wanted and unrolled it like this and then cut on that edge. So these two edges are your cut edges. You'll notice that they're not really straight. All we're doing at this step is straightening up these cut edges. My fabric on this side has a fold. If I unfold my fabric like this, there won't be a fold there. We want to work with that fold today. So we're going to leave our fabric folded. Now this width right here that says 40.5 inches, that is how wide our fabric is when it's unfolded. We want it to be that way eventually, but at this point we want it folded. So we're going to leave our fabric folded. We are going to be cutting it to the 25 inches that our fabric says for our main body piece. So that's talking about the length of your fabric here. So what we want to do is we want to lay this out. My fold's right here, my selvage edge is right here, and I'm going to fold my selvage edge up to my fold. You only cut edges. So I'm going to line this up on my grid. This is where we start talking about some of our rotary cutting equipment. This is our cutting mat. The cutting mats have a 1 inch by 1 inch square. So we've got these in a bunch of different sizes. You'll notice we have 4 big ones sitting here on the table. If you're looking at the cupboard doors on this side as well as the cupboards on the other side, we have medium-sized ones. This end cap of the cupboard has some small ones. It really doesn't matter what size you get. On this side of the cupboard, we have our rotary rulers. There are different types of rotary rulers. This really makes a difference as to what type you buy. This is a rotary ruler that we purchased at Walmart. It is made of a really cheap, thin plastic. Therefore, as students use it, it has a tendency to get cut up, and that edge is not perfectly straight anymore. So it really makes a difference if you're buying your own set to buy a high-quality ruler. These are a little bit more expensive, but they're worth it in the long run. First of all, you don't end up with weird cut edges, and second of all, it has this lip edge that can go along the edge of your cutting mat so that you get a straighter cut. Our third tool with our rotary system is our rotary cutters. We've got several different styles of rotary cutters. Preference is personal. Some people like each of the different styles best. Pros and cons. This is a nice and strong hold with our rotary cutter, and it doesn't seem to wear out over time. However, that release button that releases the blade is right where your thumb sits as you're cutting. So this style is not necessarily my favorite, simply because that button's in a weird spot. This style, the mechanism that opens and closes the blade right here is made of plastic, so over time it does wear out. We have noticed that as students have used it, that sometimes the blades will break, or the covers will break, and then only a portion of your blade opens. This is the style that I personally prefer. While it is still made of plastic, as the last one was, it's a heavier duty plastic, and the whole piece slides down to replace or release the blade. So this is my preferred style. However, you do have to pay attention while you're using it. You want to make sure you keep your finger back on the blade. If you get it too far up when you're cutting, you will slice your finger. So we are lining up our fabric, our selvage edge with our fold on any one of the grid lines. Then we're going to put the lip edge right on the edge of the cutting mat, and we're going to line up. As you place your fingers on top of the ruler, you want to make sure you're getting a good angle going directly down. If you're coming in from an angle, you're going to end up sliding and it's going to twist as you're cutting. You want to make sure that you're not extending your fingers over the edge of the ruler, because that will be bad as you go to cut. So we're lining up, we are opening the blade on our rotary cutter, and we are making one solid cut away from our body. As soon as you're done cutting, you close the blade. You pull off the fabric, and then you are ready to, and all we're doing is cleaning up that edge. Now we're ready to cut the other side. You do not want to be cutting like this. Not only is that dangerous for you, you are a lot more likely to hack your fabric to pieces. So one solid cut away from your body. The directions say we want this approximately 25 inches. So I can measure over that distance. I'm using my ruler here. This is 24 inches. If I go one more inch, that's going to be 25. It doesn't have to be exactly 25. It needs to be approximately 25. So as long as you're within 1 or 2 inches, give or take. I'm going to make mine just a little bit longer than what the directions say. I am just going to straighten up these edges. So I'm just going to cut off enough to straighten up the edge. I am right-handed, so I want to make sure I keep my blade on the right side of the ruler. I don't want to be trying to cut like this across my body. So I'm lining up my ruler, I'm opening my blade, one solid cut away from my body. You'll notice I didn't quite get it all. I can just open the blade and get that little spot. One solid cut away from your body. If you don't quite get it all, and I make it look really easy, you just do another cut before you move your fabric. So my mane is now cut and ready to go. I'm ready to move on to my accent fabric. Okay, and remember, sometimes it's called trim. We had you get 1/8 of a yard of this fabric simply because that is how the smallest increment that they will sell it in the stores. Here's my selvage edge, here's my cut edges, here's my fold. We only cut edges. So I'm gonna take my fold and fold it up to my selvage edge. I'm gonna line it up on my grid line, right there, so it's nice and straight. I need 2.5 inches. This is approximately 5 inches, so I'm just straightening up one edge, and then I'm gonna cut 2.5 inches. One solid cut away from your body. To count my 2.5 inches, I can go 1, 2.5 squares, because each square is 1 inch by 1 inch. You want to make sure that you are getting a straight and even cut for this. The straighter you cut on these projects, the easier the steps are going to be as you progress. Now this is leftover. This is what you would call scrap. I would recommend hanging on to this just in case you mess up with this. You've got a spare. If you don't want to save this, this is a big enough piece that we can put it in the scrap can and other people can use it. This stuff right here, this leftover is called trash. Make sure this gets in the trash can. Okay, our last fabric that we need to cut is our hem fabric, and we want it to be approximately 12 inches. So I've got my fabric here, just the way I got it at the fabric store. I've got my selvage edge over here and my folded edge over here. Only cut edges. I'm gonna take my selvage edge up to my fold. I'm gonna straighten it out. I'm gonna line it up on my grid line. This should give you approximately 13 to 14 inches, and you only need 12. So if I measure here, I've got about 3/4 of an inch on this side and about 3/4 of an inch on that side. All I need to do is straighten up those edges. So I'm gonna line up my ruler with my mat, and I'm going to make one solid cut away from my body. I'm gonna slide over to the other side, and I'm gonna make one solid cut away from my body. You want this one to be pretty close to 12 inches, give or take an inch. It can be a little bit bigger and a little bit smaller, but you do want it to be pretty close to 12 inches. That's gonna give you good proportions for your pillowcase. And that is the end of step 1.